Good afternoon, everybody. I hope you've enjoyed your lunch. I know the energy levels dip a little bit after lunch, but we're going to get you all, we're not going to get you up, but we're going to get the energy going this afternoon. So my name's Scott Morrison. I'm the co-founder of a company called ThinkSprint. And without sounding like an X Factor contestant, I wanted to share a little bit of my journey with you in innovation, because two things to know, right? I would have been sitting in one of those chairs at some stage, like you all are. I've been in the trenches with you, trying to understand and decipher and think and work through this thing called innovation. I really have. You know, the first question I always start my presentations with a question, for those who've seen me present. And when I generally ask this question, I will probably get 10 different responses. I'm not going to ask you all because we're at tables, but I will get lots of different responses from different people in different businesses about what innovation is. Now, I'm a simple guy. Probably tell, dress quite simple, but I'm simple. I hate complexity. Whenever I was in business, I hated complexity. When I ran my businesses, I ran them off one page because people would come to me with loads of reports, agencies would come to me with loads of stuff. It's too much. And what I want to share with you today is how we've taken a really simple, not simplistic, but a simple view on innovation. And how, when it's all boiled down, it's not as complex as we think it might be, and it's certainly not rocket science. Because if I can do it, seriously, anyone can do it. But that's what I want to share with you today, and that's why I want to talk about ThinkSprint and what we do. And basically, we are a business. We help brands like Starbucks, Nike, Diesel, BBC, Samsung to innovate their business models to create new revenue streams through fast experimentation. So I was at the back when David was speaking earlier, absolutely fascinated, because everything that David said is what we've built our principles of our business on. But let me go back to the time when I was a CMO and a commercial director in business. And it may be that some of you are facing some of the things right now that used to hit me on the head every single time I talked about innovation in my own business. I call it like the noodle head. Right? This is all the stuff that gets into your business and your mind, and it prevents innovation from happening in businesses. The first main thing that happens, and I'm just talking to David about this backstage, is where on earth do you start with innovation? You've got a huge business, you've got loads of different things, you've got loads of different people giving you advice. Agencies, internal teams, the board, shareholders, everybody's got a view on what we should be doing. The real skill and the real starting point for innovation, though, is understanding this. It's doing what you should do rather than what you could do. You can do anything now. You can build any piece of tech. You can connect anything in the world. You can do absolutely anything. Doesn't mean you need to do it, though. The real innovation starts when you start to understand in your business what is it that we should be doing to innovate, not just what we could be. But we often get stuck there, never knowing where to start. And these are all things that happen to me. It's tough, right? Innovation is tough. It might be simple, it might be straightforward. Every business needs to do it, but it's tough. Ideas are easy. How many people, if we just did an experiment here, everyone would come up with a great idea for their business, I'm sure. Absolutely everyone. The skill isn't just about the ideas, though. The skill and what needs to happen with innovation is you've got to commercialize them. Innovation, in a very simple sense, is creativity times commercialization. Ideas are cheap. 90% of startups fail. The hard bit is how you make money out of it. And so often we forget about that. We've got loads of great ideas. We don't know how to move them forward in the business, and innovation dies. And that becomes the kind of byword for innovation. Didn't work. And we focus on the wrong metrics. In my old business, innovation was like, right, we're going to build this and we're going to triple our sales next year. That's what I want to see. And I think David showed a great slide earlier about the shortening of the learning cycle. Another thing I wanted to pick up on actually is when I used to talk about innovation in my businesses, every time I said the word, we've got to fail fast and fail forward and whatever, all those, everybody goes like that. Failure is not a word that is very comfortable on the boardroom table, whether we like it or not. It's great in startup world, it's great in books. In reality, it's a very difficult pill to swallow when you're in a business. So we reframe that A really smart, clear, simple way of looking at failing fast. Just call it learning fast. We talk about the key metric for innovation is learning fast. David's slide showed it earlier. I can't remember which business it was, but the learning cycle had gone from that to that. The business was learning fast. Of course, they're failing at the same time and doing things, but learning is the critical metric. And my goodness me, I don't know your businesses, but my businesses were really slow. I mean, it was legal. If I got through legal, I had to go through procurement. And I got through procurement, I had to go through the board. And I got through the board, it was just like nothing. By the time we talked about disruption, we'd been interrupted by someone who was doing it. We never got anything done. Our internal framework, our internal setup was absolutely shocking. And I'm sure, I can see Rye smiles. I smile as well, because I know that was what it was like. It was hell, it was murder. I couldn't get things through. It was just really difficult. And not only that, we were really inward looking. We focused on the day-to-day. We focused on short-term revenue. We focused on the things that mattered now. If you read Steve Blank's work, he'll talk to you, it's about horizons 1, 2, and 3. Horizon 1 stuff is all we focused on. And the reality is we needed to get external, fresh perspective, to start being outward looking, thinking about things that we really needed to do and look at our internal setup and change it. And my goodness, is innovation risky? Yeah, of course it's risky. Well, at least it's perceived to be risky. And of course, I go to my CEO, we want to do this, and by the way, I was very badly prepared when I went to my CEO to present innovation stuff, because I didn't really know how to do it. Why would I? Nobody teaches you this stuff. And my CEO would just say, don't do risk, sorry Scott. I'm going to open 5 new stores, because I know they're going to generate that. I don't want to do this e-commerce thing. Or I don't want to do click and collect. It's way too risky. So how do you overcome all these different challenges that face us every day? Are these challenges familiar to some of you? Yeah, a few nods. But the thing is, these are the things that hold up innovation. And innovation, in its purest sense, actually gets killed off. And it ends up being about the technology. I presented this the other week, actually, to the team who'd done this actual project. It was a team at Nokia. And they said, we're going to innovate the world of fashion. We're going to innovate the catwalk. What are we going to do? Let's make a dress out of mobile phones. That's innovation. Not really. That's technology. Not really making any difference. And then why Mountain Dew are playing in VR, I really don't know. I really don't know what innovation partnership this is doing. I hope there's no one from Mountain Dew. I know there's not, but tough crowd if it was. But this kind of stuff is what is called innovation theatre. Steve Blank calls it innovation theatre. We call it innovation theatre. It's great if you want to go to Cannes every year and win some awards, but it doesn't really represent what innovation is and what innovation can be in a business. And guess what? It's leading to this. Innovation hangover. The amount of CEOs that we've spoken to, who've just said, if I go on another innovation workshop, or if someone else comes to me and says, I need an innovation hub in Shoreditch in London, or in some trendy part of Dublin, or in Berlin, someone's going to get fired. People are getting annoyed and fed up in business with this kind of stuff. And that's true. And don't take my word for it, okay? When we started our business, we had all these assumptions, all these things in our head. We didn't know where to start ourselves. But we knew that these were the challenges that we'd faced. But it's not good enough to sort of walk in and go, right, I've got this great idea based on this. You've got to test your assumptions. We had to do what we tell our businesses to do, what our clients to do. So we went out, literally picked up our phones, and we spoke to 50 CMOs from all around the world. And guess what? They told us that they had exactly the same challenges. Everything's risky. It's all inward looking. I can't get it through my CEO. My process is too slow. All of them. And we actually thought, hang on, that's quite interesting. We're not, we're starting to understand a little bit about the pain of innovation in a business. Now, as I said, I'm a very simple man. And we wanted to create a very, very simple way of defining what innovation is. And we took inspiration from Peter Fisk. People heard of Peter Fisk? I'm sure many of you have. One of the leading management consultants, stroke innovators in the world on business management and business change. And he talks about joining the dots. Innovation is about joining dots in a different way. And we interpret it like this. Innovation is about finding ways to join the dots that other people miss at speed. Finding ways to join the dots that other people miss at speed. Now, to give you an analogy for that, because I see people go, what does that quite mean? It's not about creating lots of new dots. We sometimes make the assumption that innovation is about creating loads and loads and loads and loads of new things. And in reality, it's not. Has everyone seen the film Apollo 13? No? Some people? There's a great part in Apollo 13, and let's just use the analogy of the space people with a customer. They had a pretty specific need, right? They weren't going to live if the air conditioning unit wasn't fixed. You can't build a new air conditioning unit. So a man walks into the NASA, throws all the stuff on the table and says, right, this is all the stuff they've got. Now you've got to create something that's going to make the air conditioning work from this. So they go and do it, and they create something new. They took a whole load of existing dots. This is the analogy for business. You've got all these dots everywhere. In an Apollo 13 moment, where your customer is clearly telling you they've got a different need, and a very urgent need, and that's happening quicker and quicker all the time, you've got to find new ways of joining those dots to meet that customer value quickly. Because if you don't, someone else will. And that, to us, is what innovation is all about. And this is why it's important, okay? This graph just has two simple things, future growth and time. The straight line, the linear line, are businesses. We think of two business types. There are those that are heading off a cliff, and there are those going to Mars. It's quite simple. Those heading off a cliff, all they're doing is just joining the dots exactly the same way as they always have, time after time, optimizing them a little bit here and there, growing 2 or 3%. That's kind of cool. That was cool 10 years ago when nobody disrupted your business. It doesn't work like that anymore. It doesn't work like that anymore. The businesses that are going off to Mars, they're joining the dots in new ways. They're listening to the consumer time and time again. They're finding new ways to join their existing dots, a little bit like the museum in America that David talked about earlier. They're quickly finding new ways to reconnect their dots. They're not creating loads of new ones. They're just going, we've got all these assets. Let's leverage them in interesting and different ways. And the gap that that's creating is what's known as disruption. But the way that you overcome that is rapid experimentation. Rapidly identifying the dots that you want to change and experimenting quickly with your consumer in order to find new ways of driving your business forward. Now, one of the most innovative businesses in our view, of course, and I know there's going to be something from them later, is Amazon. Now, Amazon are fantastic at creating loads of new stuff, I know. But one of their biggest businesses, that takes up 30% of the market, after being only 10 years old, is Amazon Web Services. And if you don't know the story of Amazon Web Services, look it up. I probably won't do it justice. But the bottom line is, they needed to create something because they needed systems that weren't around a long time ago. So they created a whole series of server systems, APIs that they could use for other people. And they suddenly realized, hang on a minute, we've created this great asset here. Why don't we just join the dots in a different way and offer it out to loads of other customers? And they did. And Amazon Web Services is, what, a $10 billion business, 30% of the market. Amazon own it, Netflix use it. Like David said earlier, creating platforms. It's like, why wouldn't you do that? What assets do you have in your businesses right now that you're not leveraging that could help you? What dots are you not joining in your businesses right now that could help you find new ways of growing revenue? By simply and quickly experimenting. Again, quote from Jeff Bezos. That's exactly what you need to do. If you double your number of experiments per year, you're going to double your inventiveness. If you can find dots to join in different ways in your business, you will simply start to find new streams of revenue. You will grow your business in different ways. And that is innovation. And frankly, if you're not doing this, then you're probably leaving money on the table. And if I asked you to put your hand up now and say, I'd like to leave money on the table, who wants to leave money on the table? Okay, kind of answers my question. Nobody wants to leave money on the table, not when you've invested a lot of money in systems, in infrastructure, in products, in services. And yet we always want to go and find the new stuff. We don't always want to look at our business model and repurpose it to make our value proposition better, more fit for purpose for our consumers. Because it's hard work. And it takes a lot to do. We know that from what people have told us and from our own experience. So in doing all this kind of research and thinking about all these things and speaking to lots of people, one of the best things that I've ever done in my life, which has actually permitted me to stand up on stage today, is reading. Now, I know that sounds really obvious, and you read every single entrepreneur, and they'll tell you, Warren Buffett reads 10 books a day or whatever else, but I promise you, it's the most incredible learning experience that I've had in the last 12 months. And if I was to recommend 3 books to you, but 3 books that have really helped us overcome and think differently about the challenges that we faced, that I faced, that business faced, these are the 3. The first one is by John Kotter. It's a book called Accelerate. In Accelerate, John Kotter talks about small units in organizations with CEO, with top-level sign-off, who are given permission to operate outside of the norms of the business, to rapidly experiment and find new ways of joining the dots in new and interesting ways. In other words, trying to experiment rapidly to grow the business. And it's kind of a little blueprint on how that works. There's loads of great examples, but it started to make us think, actually, what would happen if you took all this outside of a business? So it wasn't confined by all the bureaucracy and all the kind of policy and all the legality and everything else. What could happen? It'd be quite interesting. And I know this is an advocate book for Colin, an absolutely wonderful book. It's called Sprint. It's Google Ventures. It's basically a way of getting from problem to solution in a week. And it's incredible. Defining a problem, iterating through various solutions, always looking from the consumer first, coming with solutions that you can then test and market really, really quickly. So this idea of rapid experimentation, how do you do it? And our third book, has anyone read this book, by the way? Fantastic. If you're in the airline industry, this is a must-read, I think, because it actually bigs up the airline industry. And it says that the way that the airlines work is they're forensic about what happens, testing and learning and understanding. When something goes wrong, they really understand what went wrong so it doesn't happen again. And they compare that to the medical industry, where the medical industry doesn't do that, and it allows these things to keep going wrong and keep going wrong. And therefore, every year, there's a $350 million or billion-dollar market in negligence claims in the US. And that black box thinking is it underpins the philosophy. It's like really interrogate what you've done so you can learn from it and make everything better so that you keep continually changing your organization. When we read those 3 books, I mean, we read more than that, obviously, but when we read those 3 books and we mapped what the CMOs had told us and we overlaid our own experience on top of that, we had an aha moment. Oh, yeah. Did say pause for mini laughter at that point. It's cropped a little bit, and they're a bit younger. This is Aha, by the way, group from the 80s, for those who don't know. But we literally had this moment, we just went, hang on a minute. If we could find a way of overcoming those challenges, consolidate that knowledge from those books, and our learnings, what could that look like? And that's when we started really trying to find what we now call ThinkSprint. And our first thing that we observed was, if people don't know where to start, or people want some real expert advice on what they should be innovating, which dots they should be joining, if you want to know the impact of, blockchain or AI on your business, right? Why go to an agency, or why go to Google, or why, I don't mean to Google, I mean as in Google it, because if you went to Google, they probably know, but I mean, why go to these third-party information sources? When right now, there are world-class experts all over the world currently running startup businesses in any field that you choose to want to know. And if you can find a way of accessing that talent and bringing that talent together, then they can start to solve the challenges that businesses have based on their deep sector knowledge and their deep experience. And these people, they're called, has anyone heard the term digital nomads? These people are called digital nomads. Some of them are coding in Whistler, and they'll do 4 hours coding a day, and they'll do a whole ski season, or they live in Thailand, or they live all over the world. And they've got what we call cognitive surplus. They've got spare brain power, and they love trying to solve problems. It's what they're good at. They're startup thinkers. So if they're all around the world and they're available, is there a way of us capturing them, working with them? Okay, so that was our first observation, which led comfortably onto the second. And the second observation was, the world is as hyper-connected now as it ever has been. There are platforms for everything. You can bring people together on platforms, create your own platform, and your teams, the old way, when I used to work, it was like, right, I need to get a crack team of people to come and work on an innovation project for me. Who's available in London? Who's available in the office? Don't know, Dave, Shirley? Right, who's available in London? Okay, we've got these hipster kids. Now you just say, who's available in the world? Because we can bring all these people together on a platform and they can work together on the challenges. The best teams are now not local, they're not in your local vicinity, they are global, truly global, and made up of anyone. There could be a coder in Peru who's got the best solution, but you'd never know unless you found them. If you found her, you bring her on the platform and she can do something with it. And the third bit, it's all well and good having these two things really well, not really nicely enveloped, but the biggest chunk of challenge was this idea of risk. How do you de-risk the process? How do you de-risk innovation in a way that you can stand in front of your CEO, stand in front of your board or your shareholders and say, we believe that this is really going to work, and here's the data to back it up. Here's objective data that will tell you that it's going to work. And we looked again. When I was working, I used to have to go to focus groups, which are horrible rooms with people who are your brand people, eating sandwiches and talking about your brand, and then 2 weeks later somebody gives you a debrief, and then 2 weeks later you read it, and 3 weeks later you don't know what you're reading, and then it all goes wrong. It's not speedy. It's not cheap either. Really expensive. Now, we can do this we work on a platform now. I could ask 1,000 people what their favorite airline was, and I could tell you in less than 30 minutes. It's that kind of validation that you can get now. When you consolidate all of that information, it becomes a really powerful tool to present back to the board, to say, look, we've already done our homework. We know what we're trying to do. We know what our targets are. We can hit them. Now let's proceed. So when we brought those three things together, we just thought, actually, we might have something here that starts to overcome the challenges that we faced in our own experience, that our CMOs have told us they face, and the CEOs told us they also face. And it's really, really simple. Because you'd expect it to be simple, because I am simple. But it is really simple. It's what we do. We use our startup thinkers to help the business understand where they need to start. Remember we talked earlier, so where do I start? What should I do versus what could I do? Our startup thinkers help us and our clients define what the business challenge is, and the business challenge gets signed off in a matter of days with our clients. And then sometimes, like my business partner, who's not here today, sadly, but he looks, well, I say he looks a bit like George Clooney. He's the better looking of the two. And we call it like our Ocean's 11 team. So based on the business challenge, we then go to our network of startup thinkers. These are the digital nomads from all over the world with deep sector experience. And we say, we've got a challenge, and we need to really understand, retail evolvement or blockchain. What's the impact of blockchain going to be in the next 5 years, etc. And we create an Ocean's 11 team of the best people in the world who can solve that challenge. And we bring them onto our platform. So they're on the platform with the business challenge. And in a week, you can see where the references are coming from now, and the sprint. But in a week, they dissect the brief. We go through a very, very clear, we call it like design thinking process. The consumer is always at the heart of the process. We create a persona, we create a series of needs, and we create a series of value propositions. But not only that, on the other side of the platform, we bring in consumers. Because this is where we start to de-risk what we're doing. We bring in consumers, and at each stage of the way, we say, are these your needs? Are your needs correct? What's the hierarchy? Yes, they are. Right. Are these value propositions going to meet those needs? Yes, they are. Great. And in a week, we've gone from a challenge to a series of ideas. So, by the way, we do this in the cloud. I meant to mention this. We do this all in the cloud. So as John Cotter says, taking this outside of the business is critical. We do this as kind of like an operating system outside the business. The challenge comes in, the client is involved at the start, we run that whole process away from the business. So it doesn't sit in all the hierarchy or the meetings, everything. It's there, it's done on the side, and it's magic. And in a week's time, we come back, it's not so much a launch plan, but with a series of ideas that the client then says, okay, these ideas have met the core targets. They've met the KPIs we set for the business challenge. You've got 17 ideas here. Which would you like to go forward with? And they might choose 5. They might choose 3. But we then go into the next part of the process, and again, we iterate rapidly with the consumers. We do what we call closed testing with a small group of consumers who help us, again, rapidly change the idea, make the idea more valid for them. And then we do what we call open testing, where we put it out in the real world. We can go back and go, right, these are our assumptions, they've been validated. We put it in the real world, and guess what? It worked. When we get to that point, we deliver a pilot plan back into the business. And that ensures all the learnings from the business challenge, the validation from the consumers, the ideas are all captured for the business to make the business case for innovation, to make the business case to join the dots in a different way, and to make the business case for not leaving money on the table. Our clients, we go back to another business challenge, hopefully, at that point. And actually, 80% of our clients who we've been working with have come back again because they've started to see the real value in doing it. In fact, one of our clients has said to us, this is really like a parallel world for inventing and testing innovative ideas with my consumers, right? And it's like, yeah, it's amazing. It's the idea of a parallel world to test your innovation. Rapid experimentation that gets you results, that gets you validation, that allows you to innovate in your business. And I'm not going to read these quotes. You can read them yourselves. Because literally by the time I've read them, you'll have read them. But for Samsung, we're helping them join the dots of their retail infrastructure in a completely different way. So they can start to take their enormous amount of hardware that they have and find interesting and new ways to bring it to the consumer directly. With Santander, they've got massive infrastructure. It's called, I don't know if people are familiar with it, it's called Santander Cycles, otherwise known as Boris Bikes. If you're familiar with those, they've got a huge infrastructure. We're helping them find ways to leverage that to make it more valid for the consumer. We're understanding why consumers want to use the bikes, why they don't, and then coming up with new value propositions to help them use the bikes more. And then with TravelX, again, we're helping them rethink how the money exchange market works. How can they rejoin their expansive dots and expansive experience in exchange, in money exchange, to find new products to grow their business. And it's no kind of small, we love working with our clients, especially because they generally tell us that when they've done it, they feel pretty elated. Because for them, It enables them to do innovation properly. It's not about the can innovation and the VR goggles and whatever else. It's real innovation that is driving the business. It's real innovation that's helping people change their careers. And it's making them feel like heroes, which we really like. So I'm going to close by saying to you, our real belief, and this was my belief as well when I was a CMO and commercial director. I used to hate leaving money on the table. The whole idea of loss aversion. I'd rather not lose something than try and gamble to get more stuff. If you're not joining the dots in new ways, you are probably leaving money on the table. And that's why at ThinkSprint, we use fresh perspectives and faster proof to help our clients generate future growth. I'd like to thank Colin and the team for inviting me today, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of the afternoon. I know you've got some special stuff coming up. Thank you.